Right now, working on my solo record. And that's a very slow progress. I've been working on it for a couple of years, and I'm hoping to try to have it done this year. At least that's my goal. You know how it is, priorities, you know, I'm touring, I write, I produce. My first instrument was an Ibanez guitar that I owned for about 6 months. Prior to that, you know, living in Sri Lanka, it was hard to get instruments or buy instruments, so you were stuck with what the sound rental company had. How it worked was if you had a band, you rented your equipment from some guy who owned a PA, and then he also owned drums and guitars, and they were very crummy and almost impossible to play. So getting that Ibanez, I had to talk to this friend and make a payment plan, because you know it's a third world country. We weren't making much money. I was probably, when I got my first bass, I might have been, let's see, about 18 years old. And I was over the moon to have that bass, because it was a beautiful instrument, a simple instrument, but it was my very own, and it played great. It was a copy of a Fender Precision made by Ibanez, so I have fond memories. Yeah, I have a main grab. It's a Bosa. What's the model number? OB5. Played it for so. Yeah, I've played that bass for about 10 years, and I just love the sound of that bass. One thing I like about Bosa basses is it's got a really nice mid-range point that some other basses don't have, and I play sometimes in bands that have a lot of low-end percussion, like playing with Sergio Mendes. There's soldo drums and low drums and things that get in the way. And when that starts to happen, most basses get lost in the mix. And this Bosa 5 that I have played for all these years, I love it because it's got that mid-range point that's really sweet. And it also has a nice low end, but not a mushy low end, So I would say that's my go-to bass for most applications. Oh, I love the sound of Elixir strings. And besides just feeling good, and besides sounding amazing on recordings and or live, the icing on the cake for me is how long the strings last. I think when I first started using Elixir, I had just gotten a gig with Yanni, and we were doing 5-6 nights a week. I think I remember our one tour was a month and a half long, and I had a bass tech, I had the luxury of having somebody tune my bass and change my strings. And at the end of the tour, he said, "Hussain, I only changed your strings once." I was blown away, because I had taken maybe 10 sets of strings on the road with me, and I never had to ask him to change the strings because they sounded great. I mean, I had a bass in my room to practice, but we played a 2.5-hour show every day, 5 days a week for a month and a half, and having to only change one set of strings. That was pretty amazing. For years, I've battled with, as you can see, my palms right now. They're constantly sweating, and I've got really acidic hands, and I've tried every string out there in the market. I was a GHS endorsee, I've tried Ernie Ball, DRs, and no matter what string company it was the same. 45 minutes, and they were toast. I mean, completely dead. And it was such a drag, because sometimes I'd be on the road and we'd play 2 sets, and while everybody else was chilling, I was there changing strings. And one day I met Andrew Ford, the bass player, good friend of mine, and we were talking about strings, and he said, "Man, you got Elixir, I think, had just come out." Can't remember how many years ago this was. But he said, "Let me go to my car and give you a set, and try it out, see if you like them." I changed my life. It really did. I couldn't believe that, after me playing it for a set, that the strings still sounded like they were strings I had just put on. And I also love the feel of the coating, the plastic coating on it. Just is easier to get around, and I was sold. And the next NAMM show, I met up with Michael Lilly, and the rest is history. You know, those are the only strings I plan on using for the rest of my life. It really changed my life. It was a life-changing experience. It was a drag to have to go to an instrument sometimes, you know, after a show, the next day at home. If I wanted to practice and go pick up my bass, the strings were all dead. And you know how it is, it's so uninspiring to play on an instrument that has dead strings. So a thumbs up to Elixir strings, you know. I'm a firm believer.